Okay, hello everybody and welcome to the Wagtail podcast. Today I have Vesta with me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Brianne. Hi, everyone. My name is Vesta. And without going straight into what I do for a living, I would describe myself as a curious soul and connected with Brianne for that purpose to just explore this topic of resilience and wellness. I worked as a nutritionist for quite a big company here in the UK, and stress management, understanding how the body works, what to eat, how much sleep we need, all that was building resilience. But I only found that out a bit later, only recently, in fact. So that's what I do, and that's what I am.
That's great, because all those things are so important to wellness and resilience. But we will get into it, I'm sure, soon. But I wonder if you could tell everybody a little bit about your own personal journey into the realms of wellness and resilience.
Sure. We need to go back quite a bit, but
Okay.
I think it started when I chose my degree, when I started studying health and nutrition back in 2010, so quite a long time ago. But as I was just discovering it, what's out there, and there is a lot out there from what's traditionally known, modern nutrition or sort of wellness approaches that are available, say on the NHS, for example, and less known approaches, more alternative therapies. And I was curious about everything, really. So that was sort of the beginning, where it started for me. I then started working in clinical research and was doing a project with kidney patients on dialysis ward. It was a site that I was visiting once a week, and we were recruiting for a project that we were running there. Now, it was my first time in such an environment where it was a huge unit, by the way. It's one of the biggest units in North London at the time. So there were about 60 beds in total. Patients would come in or change rather 3 times a day. So there were 3 shifts on a daily basis. So that constant turnover of people. And of course, the staff was friendly and trying to keep the atmosphere really quite cheerful. But, for someone who hasn't come across dialysis before, doesn't know what it is, it's basically to keep someone alive because their kidneys are not functioning. And the machine is filtrating their blood so that they can function and be. And, the patient who is on dialysis, they come into the center or unit 3 times a week. Otherwise, it's just they cannot cope. Their kidneys are not able to cope. And at one point, I broke down because it was too much for me. I was in my mid-20s at a time with very little training on how to cope with these things. So I was talking to the consultant there, and I broke down in tears. For no reason, to be honest, just a lot of pressure sort of built up in me, had to get out somehow. So I started crying. And of course, this then sort of resulted in, talking to my own manager and discussing, what could help me. And so I was, asked, or they suggested to go on to a training that is for emotional resilience, in fact. And face-to-face group training run in one of the hospitals that I worked at. And I went for it. It was something that, I was curious about. I wanted to help myself to cope with things better, working in a really busy, very stressful and, sad environment. So that's where it all sort of started. Then there are some stages to my journey, really. There was a time when I was living in London and, working in the job that I mentioned. And then I was discovering things like yoga, and I tried counseling, talking therapy otherwise. Meditation was a part of my routine, using an app like Headspace. And I knew very little about, what it does in my body. I just knew it makes me a bit calmer. That's all. And that is what I sort of needed at the time, without really going too deep into in and out of this sort of world of wellness and practices. And then as I got into it, I discovered new things. And now recently moving to where we are now in 2020, at the start of the pandemic, I sort of got into breath work and really understanding what it does, how that affects our vagus nerve, what the vagus nerve is for, why we need it, all that, and how that helps us to feel better. And the practice of daily sort of training and toning your vagus nerve, is key in feeling well, or better at least, or finding more balance. That's how I understand it, and that's how I tell people about it. And then again, I was on my journey. So it continued up until today, or at least, last year, July, where I started somatic work with a therapist and sort of discovering what my body had to tell. And there was a lot to tell. So I'm still going with it, but these were sort of key stages to my discovering myself in a way, and also what works for me.
Yeah, that journey really interests me. Because breath work, first of all, is something that I think is just beneficial all round. I mean, I don't think there's anything else that's really as beneficial for your mental health, your physical health, anything you want to do. Learning how to breathe correctly is going to help you with anything, is what I would say. And the somatic therapy, I'm really interested. So I'm really interested in those two things. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about both of them. Is that okay? And how they've helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Breath work is key. We're not breathing correctly. We're over breathing. In fact, at the time when I got into it, I read everything available about it. So Peter McEwen was the one that I read. He has a few great books on breathing. Dan Brule was another one that sort of made me look into it a bit more. And really, the mechanics of breathing shifts your nervous system as well. So how we breathe is how we are. And actually later on, when we probably get into the tips and tricks stage of this conversation, there is a quote that stuck to me, and that is that our story, what we tell ourselves, follows our state. So if we are in a disorganized state, we become disorganized, and that's reflected in self-talk. So yoga breathing in particular was where I started with it, and pranayama was something that I was used to as I was sort of doing yoga. But what I got to understand more is the actual breathing. So where does the breath start, and what is sort of the wave of it? We are told, don't breathe from your chest or upper body. That's very shallow, right? Try diaphragmatic breathing. That's the way to go. Yes, but actually, once you inhale, in fact, your whole belly moves. So lower belly, upper belly, moving into the chest, and the chest not going up necessarily. That's different muscles helping you to pull your rib cage. Instead, the rib cage is moving out both directions, so forward and back and side to side. And that's the full breath cycle, deep breath. And it doesn't mean that we inhale with a loud noise through the nose, not at all. Very gentle inhale with really noticing the belly expand from the bottom up, the chest expand. And even if, without knowing anything about breathing, only just that, and just sitting with it, with that sort of practice, that would be beneficial, because you're consciously choosing to interrupt the normal day-to-day breathing and the pattern that you're used to. So things like that. That was my breath work starting point. And then somatic work, the one that I am involved in is based on Peter Levine's work. I don't know if you're familiar.
I don't know much about Peter Levine, no.
Okay. Okay, so it's he's one of the very famous trauma-based therapists. Lots of books out there. Awaken the Tiger Within rings a bell, I believe that's by him. And essentially, it's talking about the mechanics of the stress response and understanding what happens and actually knowing how to shift it. While it is about, reacquainting yourself with your body and understanding what's going on, and that can be achieved through breath work, there is a piece of somatic experience work where, well, my therapist reminds me it's relational work. So you really, you could do it alone, but actually it's that you do it with another person. And for people who suffered PTSD of some form, can benefit from that because there is a safe person working with you, in an environment where you are encouraged to, well, to be okay with what is. And if not, then there is a person to really guide you and help you through that. So it's fascinating to me. The journey again is ongoing. It's wonderful when you have a release. We pile things on, we bottle things in so much every day that sometimes we don't get a release. And I think for me, that's what somatic work is. Once I process something, something that's been stuck in my heart or in my body in some way, there is a release. And again, for someone who's not familiar with the work, the release could be in many different ways. You could start yawning, for example, and that's very common to me. I know somebody else who starts burping, and that shows that whatever was needed to be processed was processed, and you can sort of create more capacity, more space for more sort of expansive states of mind and feeling.
Okay. I'm really interested in that because I think with the connection between the mind and the body and the effects that we know from work that's been done about how stress and trauma impacts illness and how well you're functioning and how well you keep. So to release it in a somatic way, in a bodily way, to me just kind of makes sense, and it's also interesting, but it's not something I've done, so it sounds really good. But breath work is interesting what you're saying, because I went to a Patrick McEwen live workshop, and it was like a 2-hour workshop, and he went through all the mechanics and sort of watched you breathe, and then after that, I figured out that I was breathing like 22 times a minute. I was like, well, that was triggering so much in my body. So I actually went to a breathing physiotherapist, and kind of like had loads of sessions to clear that out. And it's amazing how different you can feel in every way just by trying to breathe, I don't know, 10 to 12 times a minute instead. Did you notice a massive difference?
I wouldn't say that I did. For me, because I do practice, I've been practicing such things for a while, and normally if there is not a lot going on in my world and I'm coping well, I'm sort of finding it sort of I'm in a good space. But if there are just too many things being thrown at me, that's when I struggle. That's where my diaphragm does not move in any way. I cannot inhale fully. I cannot open my chest to really take it in. So that's for me. But when I do practice day in, day out, the ease of breathing becomes just a norm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you would, but I'd recommend breath work to anybody. I just think it's really important. But so, and doing the somatic therapy, what's the difference in how you feel since before you started that and as you're going through it?
A big difference. A lot, the effects of it I'm noticing is in interactions with people.
Okay.
There was a lot of anxiety in my body, and yet I wouldn't have called myself an anxious person, because on the outside I looked very calm, very collected, you know. I was staying quite stoic, in a good way, but yet on the inside there was a lot going on, and there was that anxiety that, you know, didn't let me breathe fully, or I needed constant practices, you know, to practice so that I could feel in a good, or be in a good state. And now what I'm noticing, the anxiety in my body was, you know, fast heartbeat, knots in my belly, that sort of thing. And it's different now. It's not there anymore as much. And as a result, I'm more open to the world. It's hard to explain, but there was a time where, as we were working through something that I sort of was dealing with, and I was coming to the end of sort of processing that thing, and we were nearly the resolution of this process, where I could feel, actually, I've done it, you know, the cycle is complete, and I'm good now, you know. I was noticing a lot of open doors around me, so just walking on the street, and that was an invitation for me to come in and say hi, something that I normally don't do. But once I process something and there is more space in me, I'm able to also then connect with the world better. So that was one of the little things that have been happening, you know. And yeah, more open doors after working on things.
And are you saying that, like, when you're doing it, you can actually feel the shift while you're doing it, from I'm not feeling so great in my body and now it's gone, I've that's been processed. You can physically feel the process. And
Totally. So, you know, there is no talking in the session, or very little talking. There is no expressing any thoughts. It's about sensations and tracking them in the body. So let's say I sat down and the session started, and here I am, not necessarily having any issues in life, but generally just not feeling great. And you know, we start tracking it. So let's say I can really feel tension in my chest, in my heart. The heart is beating. That's not very pleasant at all, but you know, you stay with it. And I guess what I said earlier, because there is another person there with you, sort of holding space for you, not talking to you necessarily, just being there. That sensation that is quite unpleasant and quite activating, is bearable, more or less. And if it's not bearable, you can always move somewhere else, you know, where the body's saying, hello, you know, look at me, I need some attention. And then, you know, once you track it, the sensation could move down, could move up. And it's amazing what the body does. It changes and transforms. And like I said, the release that, you know, some all discharge happens, where some people could be yawning, could be burping, could be crying, of course. That's another type of release.
Wow. So do you do the same kind of job now? What do you do now?
So, well, my job, I worked as a nutritionist. So while I wasn't dealing with people's bodies per se, we were working around that. And what you earlier said about being in a state of sort of dis-ease, and that sort of then developing into chronic illnesses or chronic problems, that's what I saw in my day-to-day job, particularly working with women who were referred specifically for weight loss. A lot of the women that were referred for weight loss, they would have tried many different diets. It worked for a little while and then it stopped working. They got back into bad habits and all that. And really, what was going on there is that the diets were not the problem. They were dysregulated. They were not able to, the body was not able to cope in any way. So that could mean that maybe they didn't have the body didn't have the support it needed. Lack of sleep, hormonal problems as a result of age and stage in a woman's life. And to just cut down on calories and hope for the best, it's not how it works. And unfortunately, people still blame themselves. That was the hardest bit, I think, working with women. They were blaming themselves not losing weight. When in fact their body was not able to do that for them because it was tired, really exhausted. And that's where, my personal work on myself that allowed me to see what was really going on in women specifically who were having problems with weight loss or their diabetes control, for example. So there is a connection that, I think I wouldn't be as good at what I was doing if I didn't do the work on myself as well.
Yeah. So do they teach you about that connection when you're learning about nutrition? So you go into the job and you're just there to lose the weight. So how did your personal work and your knowledge help you to kind of work in a different way? What did you do to change things and help people differently?
Yeah, well, I wish they taught that. They don't. There is some training on communication skills, but it's all very head level, all very much like, this is how you reflect or paraphrase, or this is what you do to help someone, understand what's going on, or sort of help them make a goal, create a goal. And while it's useful, there is a place for it. What we are not taught is how the person is and the fact that I can influence their state as well. So from doing this work on myself, I realized that the way I speak, how slowly, how quickly, how calmly, that affects the other person that is on the other end of receiving my advice as a professional. And that's extremely useful when the person is very resistant, for example, in creating a plan that would help him. And so as soon as I drop into my body, slow down and really talk without trying to influence anything or motivate him, because we are, well, as a health professional yourself, you would know that you want to fix problems for people, right? But it's not going to happen. There will be more resistance coming up from the person, right? So it's about stepping back, still being present with the person, but allowing them to sort of do it themselves while you're present and facilitating this transformation in the moment.
Yeah, so how do you get across to people then that actually the barrier isn't their fault? The barrier is they've got all this other stuff going on. How do you make that connect? Because some people, and we've heard of it because just life circumstances, have brought us in that direction, but many people wouldn't specifically know the link between certain things. So how do you get them to understand all this other stuff rather than just strictly, this is the remit of nutritionists?
Great question. Sometimes you can't really because of certain time available to you or the structure of the program that is there. So in those situations, what I normally do is explain the role of emotions that play onto achieving goals to do with weight or general health, because that's essentially what the body is, the body's language, emotions. The body doesn't speak in thoughts. It's the head that you know, creates thoughts and logic and reason and help us communicate. But we are communicating from the body as well. So, you know, when someone is tired, and something that happens a lot, you know, if someone is tired, that's where I normally say, well, how have you been supporting yourself? You know, what resources did you use or didn't use to help you feel a bit more at ease? Talking from that perspective rather than explaining the stress response and you know, what really happens, and the, you know, what cortisol does, and how you're just in a fight or flight zone all the time, and you're not coming back to sort of regulated state where you feel calm and able to focus on the problem at hand, deal with it calmly, and enable your conscious mind and prefrontal cortex to switch on and help you solve those problems.
It must be difficult. I mean, there's always a matter of timing, isn't there, in the time you have with people that come through. But what would you say was the main way you were able to motivate people within your job to help them achieve a better sense of wellness?
Again, it's obviously rewarding the person in some way, and that the way I would be able to do that is to really encourage them, be that voice of support that some don't have in their lives. Some lack of support network is so important. Well, support networks are important, and if you don't have someone or a group of people there, it's just really hard to get well and be well. And you know, being there for them, encouraging them to continue, noticing myself as well in the process, because like I said, my nervous system, the way I communicate influences the other person. So if I get agitated, that's my signal to draw back a little bit and allow the person to speak more. And it's really, I think the best thing to do is listen more and speak less, regardless.
Yeah. Okay. So there's links basically all through your life, isn't there, of wellness and building this resilience. And so you have an Instagram page, and that's something completely different to your job as a nutritionist. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what you do to support wellness through that?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm a heart alchemist, and that's where I share my heart more than anything. It's less about what I know and what I feel. Instead, it's what I feel, and I'm not as active because actually it's based on my passion and desire to share what comes from my heart and understanding of the body as I learn about it, not from the textbooks. That's why my posting is irregular. But the idea there is try and connect the dots for others as well. So a problem that comes up a lot of the time, and in the work that I do, but also generally talking to people, friends, you know, motivation.
Yeah.
We all struggle, but we struggle because we are just distracted all the time, and our nervous system is overstimulated. So there is no space to actually get on with things that we love. And you know, that love or passion or whatever is generated not in your head. It's definitely not a head. It's a bodily sensation. You have a warm feeling, something warm, heat maybe. It's a pull towards something, an impulse to do something. But when you lose that, or you know, you get distracted by things in life, you lose that, or you don't notice that anymore. So with heart alchemy, really, it's about coming back to the heart and transforming whatever there is. So there could be anxiety, for example. And that's serving a purpose. That's serving a purpose for you to sort of wake up and see something is not necessarily right there. You know, your body is on alert. And why, you know? So sort of asking yourself. So anxiety in itself is not a problem. In fact, it's great because it alerts us that something is not right and we need to act about on it. And it's definitely in a hard space. Again, it could be, you know, thoughts, I think, come as a result of feeling, at least for me. And some people could argue otherwise. You know, there are theories that it's thought, feeling, and then behavior. But being quite a sensitive person and quite attuned to what's around me, everything comes through sensations, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's a guy that writes on anxiety, Dr. Klaus Bernhard, and he's actually saying that you can be triggered in a kinesthetic way or any kind of way, actually, and it doesn't matter. There's no order. It's just going to completely depend on the person, and how you're triggered might then determine how you might best approach kind of managing those symptoms. So yeah, there's a lot of traditional theories that say thoughts first, but I totally agree with you that it can come in any way.
Yeah. And I didn't know that, in fact. So I'm glad that there is, you know, someone saying, actually, we know that it's not only just one way or the other way. And it depends on the personality, I suppose. So like I said, I am quite sensitive to my environment and what's around me and people. I can sense sort of, not in any, you know, woo-woo way, but I sense energy and I am able to sort of read the situation and what's going on, see behind the lines or hear behind the lines quite well. So that is a lot of information to take in on top of the verbal expression that the person has. And that can block, I guess, well, like I said, the Heart Alchemist pages, more than anything, is a passion project that I do when I feel called to do it. It's not a constant or consistent thing for me. Rather, you know, Instagram won't sort of disappear as such. You know, the page will be there. So whenever, even I, you know, sometimes going back to older posts I posted, it speaks to me again. You know, so it's that.
It's great actually that you can find this kind of content on Instagram, because you can get so much support in that forum, and you find little bits, and it's like a community, which is really nice. So I'm just intrigued about something you said earlier, because you were sort of saying that you used to have all these wellness practices, you know, whether it was meditation, and then you kind of shifted into something different, kind of the somatic work and the breath work. And then you sort of said that actually, and tell me if I've understood this incorrectly, but I think you were saying that actually now you've done this kind of maybe different level stuff, you don't need to maintain and do all the other stuff all the time, because you've kind of dealt with stuff. So the other stuff doesn't really come up in order to have to keep dealing with it. Is that right?
100% correct. Absolutely. I was dependent on practices in the past because I was not okay thinking that I was okay. And, you know, things like yoga and meditation, and they had a purpose. They kept me sort of, they allowed me to see how I could feel, or how it feels to be, you know, at ease in certain moments, but it was not a sustained moment. Whereas now, provided I am coping well, I don't need to rely on the practice so much. It's there, I'm still, you know, doing it, but it's not that, oh my God, I'm feeling stressful, I need to do a bit of yoga, or sit down and, sorry, I'm feeling stressed out and my heart is beating fast, I need to sit down and do yoga and breathe. That's not where I'm at the moment, because I think of a lot of release and, you know, therapy that helped me to do that. And I also actually change it up now and then, because some practices serve me for a time. They don't last long. what in particular, I guess, well, yoga, for example. There was a time where I was practicing quite, intense type of yoga, vinyasa or ashtanga. That felt good for some time. Now I'm totally a yin person. I do yin yoga, which is holding the pose comfortably for like 3 minutes. And it's about sort of slowing down really, and that works for me. But again, I don't use it to bring me from really stressed out state to, okay, I need to calm down and do yoga. I don't know how I can come back to that state of balance now, having done a lot of different things and specifically somatic work, but it happens with, well, easier than before.
I'm really interested in that, because for the last 5 years, I suppose, I've worked in a personal recovery system, which basically means that you might never get rid of symptoms. You might always have to find a way to live with what you're experiencing, which basically means like a maintenance of practices to keep yourself well and to live with what you're going through. But then it was only just recently when someone said to me, yeah, but you never had all that stuff before. Like, a lot of people never had that stuff before. So why would you accept that as a thing? Why can you not go back? And that really got me thinking, like, okay, well, yeah, that also makes sense. So it's interesting to hear you say that, because I am really coming round to this type of thinking that actually there are deeper level practices that can actually stop the whole daily stuff, really, that you're really trying to hold on to. I think, I don't know.
My gut feeling would be to agree with you there as well. We live in a world that is about money in some way. And, to maintain a disease, to keep it managed, or some kind of condition, is profitable. It sounds really twisted, but it is profitable for some people. And, a vulnerable patient believes what an authoritative figure tells them. And depending on that, of the awareness of the person, of the professional the person is working with, you could hear about diabetes management, for example, medications, and all the industry really that there is, coming from where I come from.
Yeah.
But diabetes remission and not having diabetes is as possible in early stages of developing the disease. So it just depends on, I think, it's not the awareness and even commitment of the health professional to focus on health or focus on profitability of things. And I hope it doesn't come across badly, but that's what I really feel and hear and see. Or when I was, really supporting people there, a lot of them would tell me that, no, the doctor didn't tell me about this. I was prescribed this medication and to just get on with it. And they would be on certain medications for several years without a proper review, where they could actually either stop it because the symptoms stopped, or perhaps change the dose, or depending on the needs of the patients. But of course, we can't blame anyone in particular. We also can't blame the system, because the system is not strong. So, and then what's the point? Then the point becomes empowering the person to stand up for themselves and speak for themselves and ask for what they need, and teaching them to do that in a way, and being in partnership with the health professional. We are not anymore telling them what to do. We are there to sort of just facilitate and help them explore things. That's my view, at least.
Yeah, I think it's important, isn't it, to empower people, so they don't have to settle. If if they have a thought in the back of their head, however impossible they think it is, or however crazy they think it is, we need to encourage people to explore that, because you just don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us, what would be your top tips, tricks, and strategies to help somebody on a wellness and resilience journey?
I've made a few notes. Okay. And again, it depends, well, at what stage of the journey they are. But I think the ones I sort of highlighted and I wanted to share with you were 3 of them, in fact. So it's actually trying metta meditation. So metta is sort of loving kindness, it's called otherwise. And again, it's about coming back to your heart a bit more than staying in your head. It's a mantra-based meditation where you just repeat, may I be happy and healthy. May you be happy and healthy. May we be happy and healthy. So not only focusing on your own benefit, but you're actually including everyone else, a friend or a stranger. And that for me was something that I sort of tried and felt straight away, there is more warmth in me inside. And I would actually encourage people to try it, because it's a simple meditation. All you need to do is, listen to the recording and repeat also, or you could repeat it, the sort of the mantra in your head. And you could change it up depending on what you really want or wish yourself to feel. May I be well. May I be abundant. For some people that's important. May I be joyful. Whatever is missing in life, at that moment, you can wish yourself that, and I guess the power of self-healing, even I would call that.
So where would people go to find kind of metta meditations that they can listen to?
Yeah, there is lots of them, in fact, on YouTube. That's probably the easiest way to find it. They're free, depending on the length that you are looking for, from 15 minutes to half an hour and more. Trying that and seeing what that shifts. And it might not be any sort of grandiose shifts happening straight away, but then equally, if that doesn't feel right, walking on the street and saying this to yourself, and looking at the strangers really while you're walking, in your mind, in your head, repeating, may you be happy, and sort of connecting with strangers that way. You don't need to say it out loud, just wish someone well. And in turn, again, what can be hard about this meditation is that someone who is not used to be kind to oneself and really feel, love themselves, or show care and appreciation to themselves, can struggle with saying, may I be happy and healthy and well, because they are not used to it. But they maybe could wish that to someone else, a close friend, a family member, and that's easy for them. So whatever is easier, I think that's the starting point. And once you get comfortable with that, then you can practice that on yourself and return the all the good wishes that you send out to other people as well.
Okay, I love that. I'm actually going to try that. I've never done that before. I like the idea of doing that when you're walking, and just kind of like radiating love and happiness to other people. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah, try. And I'm curious to hear how you find it.
I'll feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, great. The other thing that really helped me to some extent, but I think generally is a useful tool for everyone who starts to sort of notice the body instead of the mind only, or trying to connect them both, is understanding your emotions. So what is the reaction that you have to something? What emotion is behind that? So there is this tool called the mood meter, and it's created by Yale University, and they essentially grouped, maybe that's the word, emotions to pleasant and unpleasant, high energy, low energy. So based on energy and pleasantness. And that's an easy way to sort of think about it, really, rather than complicating. What am I feeling? What's really going on? Well, if it's a high energy emotion, let's say, well, let's pick anger, right? So it's a high energy emotion. You know, you feel the surge of sort of this energy that could be rushing to your face. Normally people get red-faced or heartbeat or sweaty palms or sort of this just charged emotion, right? So anger is high energy. Is it pleasant? Not really, no. You want to get rid of it, sort of, and people get rid of it actually, by doing something. But if you're not doing anything, then it's unpleasant. And if you just stay with it, it's, it boils your blood, the blood boils, as they say, right? Yeah. So it's an unpleasant emotion and it's high energy. And by that, you can identify where you are, and then you can see that when you sort of connect the dots, okay, it's anger. So it's different to anxiety, which is all, it's unpleasant, anxiety is, but it would be slightly less energetic, I would say. And then moving, say, to joy, when you're really happy, it's very pleasant and it's high energy. Equally, being calm, it's pleasant, but it doesn't require a lot of energy, really. It's just a feeling of sort of bliss and ease and, and sort of connecting the dots. So what am I experiencing? Is it high energy? And is it pleasant? And by that, using that mood meter, you can identify, okay, where do I sit? And once you sort of identify that emotion, there are studies saying that it takes 90 seconds for the emotion to complete its cycle, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm really feeling really revved up by anger because somebody said something, or, at work, somebody, there is a deadline and the team is not coping with it, and becoming angry because of the reputation, let's say, you don't want to lose your reputation, and that angers you because if it was you only responsible for the project, you would be fine, but because there is a team, that angers you. Yeah. So in that case, I'm feeling angry. You accept that. There is no reason to start and change it. Instead, it's like, it's anger. I know it's anger. My heart is beating. I feel I'm getting red in my face. Mm-hmm. I want to really sort of, punch someone in a way, but there is that urge to just, get rid of it and move that energy through by doing something that is not, wouldn't have the best outcome, really. So we hold ourselves back, but it's still a valid emotion to feel. So it's just acknowledging it, noticing, and letting it run its course without acting on it. Mm-hmm. So allowing that sensation of, blood rushing to your face, to your hands, to your legs, even maybe, to come through. And if you need to take a walk, for example, you take a walk. So that will move that energy as well. And equally, the alchemy of transforming anger to passion, okay, so I'm noticing anger, but passion is very similar. It's also high energy. However, it's pleasant. So it's on the opposite end. So there is a way to transform it as well. But first, you still have to acknowledge that what is happening right now is anger. Now, I can use that to my advantage because it's a high energy state, and passion is also a high energy state, right? So I could give it a moment, allow that to be there, and then act with this understanding. I can change it from anger to passion, and really maybe then a more creative solution would come up where it would be gathering everyone together, let's say, going back to that example, and really just expressing what's going on, so everyone is sort of on the same page, and reminding ourselves we wanted to do this because we wanted to achieve this or the other, right? It's sort of connecting to that we started it for a reason, and there is passion, and we wanted to do it because of something that drove, there was a driver for it. So that passion, that driver, or drive, is there as well as anger. They both can coexist.
So just the mood meter, is that online? Is that something people can access, and that will take them through this process, and they can understand that?
Yeah, so the mood meter, you can find many. It's also an app. So if someone wants to have a handy app on their phone, it's available. But also it's just a sort of a picture, really. And if you type in the mood meter, it would show exactly that. So 2 axes and 4 quadrants essentially. And by going through the process of, okay, it's unpleasant and it's high energy, you know where to look for the emotion that you're experiencing. And once you name it, once you nail it to yourself in a way, truly differentiating what is anger, what is annoyance or frustration, there are different levels of it, right? So anger is the highest charge. The mood meter really helped me to understand the subtle sometimes differences between feeling frustrated and feeling anger.
Okay, I've never heard of that tip, so that's really great. That's something that somebody can really look up and explore. So I like that. Thanks for sharing.
That's okay. And lastly, and it's sort of just to, I guess, connecting everything, it's self-regulation techniques. And that could be breath work, and that could be meditation, that could be walk in nature, that could be singing if you can sing, that could be humming if you can sing. So what I'm naming now is essentially to activate your vagus nerve, that then calms, or well, sort of calms your nervous system down, or equally could excite it a little bit, not to the point where you're not able to cope, but just to tone it, to bring a tone to your body. On a day when you wake up tired, you had a bad night's sleep, maybe it was a late night, all that, the next morning you're not as fresh. But knowing that there are some things that you can do to just bring your sort of mood and tone back up, by just humming in the morning, by just dancing a bit, moving your body, singing in the shower, the good old singing in the shower.
So how would people know what a self-regulation activity is and what isn't a self-regulation activity?
Great question. So I think it's collecting your own data about yourself, where, after doing this, I feel this. So that if you are feeling a little bit frustrated, and you listen to a song and maybe sing alongside, sing along, that makes you feel a different way afterwards, right? So that could be used as self-regulation technique. And, the ones that I guess technically are known as self-regulation techniques, they involve, breathing and moving your body in a certain fashion. But I wouldn't be as prescriptive as do this specific meditation, yoga, or, there could be many different things that make one person regulate back to, what feels for them good, and sort of their baseline, so to speak. But that same activity might have a completely opposite effect to someone else.
Sure.
So it just depends.
People have to do a little experiments to see what helps them. But yeah, I think coming back to the breath is always a good place to start, or coming back into your body, just to, as you say, just to notice what's going on. This is a good technique, but sometimes it's hard to think about that, isn't it? If it's a high emotion, it's hard to remember to calm and come back into your body and breathe and just let it ride. It's a bit difficult, but helpful if you can practice that.
Absolutely. It is difficult. It's not easy. Nobody said it was easy, but it's more about, well, yes, it didn't work. You know, you couldn't do it the first time, even though you had the best of intentions. But there will be opportunities again and again and again and again to really, because you know you have the tool, it's sort of in your toolbox. You are aware of the fact that you don't need to act on that emotion that is highly charged. So I wouldn't even say the choice, but if you were to somehow remind yourself, you know, or be aware of the situations where you can really easily get triggered, and know that if this happens, then you have this plan that you could execute in the moment.
Yeah, so that's a good tip. Excellent. Okay, have you got anything else before we close? Is there anything else you want to share with everybody?
I really enjoyed talking to you today, Brianne, and thank you for giving me space to share my journey and my learnings, some of which were based on my professional practice, some of which were based on my own personal inner work and understanding how my body and mind communicate and what happens. And I love this quote that I keep coming back to now and again, especially when I am faced with something difficult. The quote goes a bit like this: life will reveal people and circumstances to show you where you're not free.
Okay.
So, in fact, anything that's challenging or feels overwhelming or too much, or your reaction is out of proportion to the actual trigger, that's just life's way of saying that something is there to explore.
Yeah.
So the life will reveal those people and circumstances to show you where you're not free.
I love that quote. I think that it makes you think, doesn't it? Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's been wonderful to speak to you, because I like to hear about the journeys that, you know, you've tried everything and you've gone a step higher each time because you've just been really curious. And I think that's a brilliant thing that we can do as well. Like exactly what you've done when we want to increase our wellness and our resilience is use that curiosity and see where it takes you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.